desk. This desk is cluttered and it's peeled. Oh my god. Oh my god. I just lift my lips and that's how I'm now. Hello, by the way. Hello. Hope you're well. Hope you're swell. Hope you're wavy. Hope you're everything good. Feeling great, feeling nice. Feeling nice. Up there in the book. It's a lively one. Today I'm across I said I want part one minimum to be around like 60k words, which is kind of light. You know, realistically, I'm probably going to end around 70 to 80k thousand. But it's nice to hit that minimum threshold. I think I'm going to do a marathon today. Look, you got to pace yourself. You don't want to push yourself too much. But I'm going to try writing more than usual today. I just want to finish this chapter I'm on. Yeah. So that's an update for you. I promise this will be out. I know it just seems like forever, but you know, like realistically, I think I'm the one who's made it seem more drawn out than it is. Because realistically, this is a very normal timeline for books. Well, actually, it might be faster than usual. Some authors take years to write a single book. I started this in August, this version of the story at least. You know, I've had different drafts of the story, but I'd written different versions of the story, but then I spent a lot of time off of it, and then I just randomly picked up the book again in August. A new version. I just drafted a new version with a new premise and everything, but it was still a pirate novel. The idea was always to write a pirate novel, but the plot changed and a lot of details changed. So this version of the story I've been writing since August. So that hasn't even been a full year. Part 1 will be out before a year has passed. So I'm the one who's made it seem more drawn out than it is. I think this is very much within the scope of how long writers usually take to put up work. I think I'll get faster as time goes on. Once this is out, this will be my first book, full book that I've completed, that I've published. Praise the Lord. So, you know, it's been a learning process. I think when I get used to finishing stuff, I'll get better at it and faster as well. But yeah, as much pressure as I put on myself, one thing I never do is rush. It never gets to the point where I rush, because I know that it would just affect the work. I've been transparent about my process. Part of me is like, should I talk about this or whatnot? For those who do wonder, because I've talked about how I use AI to both rate my work and edit. So some people might take that as AI is writing the book, which is I don't know if that's a purposeful misinterpretation of my words, but if you understand what editing is, so basically, and look, I didn't know this beforehand. Like, I underestimated what the editing process actually is because while I was writing, people were saying, "Do you have an editor for your book?" Personally, people I know would ask me if I have someone editing this book, and I said, "No, I'm just gonna write it myself. I'll edit it myself." And they said, "You need an editor," and I didn't take it seriously. But then I started to realize, well, I did my research on what editors do and all this sort of stuff, and I started to realize how important that part of the process actually is. And when you think about a writer, no writer is. I don't want to speak for everyone, but generally speaking, you have strengths and you have weaknesses. So editors might tighten up your prose, which might not be very strong. They might give you pointers with regards to details you need to trim, bloating your story, so on and so forth. There's always a blind spot, right? I think about like J.R.R. Tolkien, the guy who wrote Lord of the Rings. He would have these sessions with writers. C.S. Lewis, the guy who wrote Narnia, would participate in these, and they'd give him pointers, tell him what he should consider cutting or changing within his own book. He was a very stubborn guy, but there were certain details that they convinced him to change. For example, he was very heavy, like the original drafts of the Lord of the Rings. First of all, the Lord of the Rings was meant to be one long book. So you know how it's 3 books? It's a trilogy. It was meant, if you don't count the Hobbits, the original trilogy, if you don't count the Hobbit, it's 3 books. It was meant to be one long one, and someone told him, "Don't do that. Don't do that. That's too long. Don't do that." So he split it up into a trilogy. And another thing that when he was attending those meetings with like C.S. Lewis and those guys, they were telling him that he focuses too much on Hobbit speak, like so the Hobbit dialogue and all that. It was taking away from the action and the actual story and stuff. So they told him he needs to trim a lot of that stuff. And I did notice when I was reading. I've never read the full trilogy, and one of the reasons why I never got around to finishing the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring. That's the first one, right? I think I got like halfway. I just noticed that he's very heavy on details, like on the descriptions. He spent a lot of time setting the scene. And sometimes it feels a bit unnecessary how long it goes on setting the scene. And yeah, for me, it just felt a bit tiresome. I still want to read it though. I haven't watched the movies and I haven't read the book. I don't know what goes on in Lord of the Rings to on. I know some things that just made their way into pop culture, but there's so much I don't know. And I want to read the books before I watch the movies. I don't want to watch the movies and then read the books. I'm not a fan of that approach. But regardless, these are all people that were in a way editing his work, and he had an editor as well on top of that would also help him. I think that's the person that told him he needs to split the book into a trilogy instead of having it be one long saga. Because someone has to power through. Imagine how big that book would be. Ooh. My God. So editors play a pivotal role in the process. So I realized, okay, I probably do need one, but I can't afford one. Not like a high quality one that knows what they're doing and you can work with them regularly. Way out of my budget. Way. Out of my budget. And then I realized, oh my gosh, AI can do this. AI can help me with this. So what it does is here's what I do. I write. So I'll write the whole thing. So let's say I write a chapter. I'll write a chapter from start to finish, and then what I'll say is my preferred choice is Grok. I like Grok style. I'll say to Grok, rate this out of 5. You know, give me some pointers. So it'll give me a rating out of 5, highlighting strengths and highlighting what needs to be improved. I like that it doesn't say the weaknesses; it just says what needs to be improved. It makes it feel like it's a softer blow. But it says here are your strengths, here are what needs to be improved. So it lists all the weaknesses. So then what I do is, usually I consistently land around 4.5 without Grok's help, out of 5, and then I look at the weaknesses it highlighted, and then I go back and I write again and I adjust that. So for example, it'll say the character said this. So I'll give a very specific example. There was a moment in which a character said he was going to stop doing this certain thing. It was a certain behavior of his that was bothering someone else, and he said he would stop doing that. But then in the next scene, he did something that basically contradicted his promise. It was a subtle thing, but it's something that someone would notice and be like, well, he's being inconsistent. So Rob pointed it out and said, you might want to address that. Is he doing it on purpose, or is that just a mistake on your part, so on and so forth. So I changed that, and it's a bunch of things, right? It might point out some grammar mistake I made, or like I may, sometimes you might swap out names. You might mistakenly put another name instead of this name. There are two names of characters that are very similar in my head. They sound the same, so sometimes I make a mistake and swap them out, which can confuse the whole narrative. So what Grok does, he'll be tracking and be like, wait, who's that? Because that doesn't make sense in this context. And he points that out. Why am I saying he? Whatever. And stuff like that. So then it'll be a bunch of that stuff, right? Like from my weaknesses. It'll be stuff like that. So I go and I address all of that and I change that. He'll say, like, the prose could be tighter here. It's a bit verbose. You're using a lot of words. You could trim that down. You could simplify it. Or it's a bit dramatic. It's a bit melodramatic. The way you phrase that, you could tone that down a bit, make it sound more grounded. All that sort of stuff. And you make all those adjustments, and then I send it back to Grok and I say, how is this? And then if the rating was 4.5, it might go to 4.75. Sometimes it goes straight to 5. I've had that happen quite a few times. And then, the Grok said, this was great. And then I say, enhance it now, add your enhancements, add your flair, add your tweaks. So then what Grok does is he might swap out certain words, he might tighten certain sentences, but none of those stories change. What Grok is doing is just it's like beautifying the text to make it nicer to read. But that's after we've gone through a process of really pruning it and making it as nice as I can make it by myself. And this, guys, is what editors in real life do. This is what editors in real life do. And no person who's being fair would say that the editor wrote the book. The editor did not write the book. They edited it. They edited the book, okay? So, I just wanted to make that clarification. Because it's inevitable that I'm going to put out this book and people are going to say AI wrote it. I can see that coming. And I think most people know that that's not true, but I think people are just malicious. So it is what it is. But for those who were wondering, who are being sincere, AI is not writing this book, guys. I'm writing every word. It's a long process. It's an arduous process, and it's taking time. If AI was writing, this book would have been out a while ago. If I wanted to take that route, I would never feel comfortable with that. I wouldn't feel good about that. I want to put in the work. It's more rewarding if people really like the book and it's your story. So just understand that when you're reading this book, this is my story. These are my characters, the events, everything in the story was conceived in this brain. Where Grok shines, where Grok really helps me, and it's significant help, and I'm very grateful for it, is identifying flaws that I need to work on and all that sort of stuff, and just making the writing, the prose pretty. Not to say that I have terrible prose. I think I've definitely improved over these past few months, and I've been doing writing exercises to work on my prose as well. So I've really improved. But yeah, you can always be better, and Grok definitely helps with that. And I also use ChatGPT as well. What I like to do is cross-reference. So I'll have that. So I'll go through that refinement process with Grok, like refine until I've addressed all the issues, and then I'll say to Grok, enhance it. I'll say to ChatGPT, enhance it, and I'll compare whose enhancements are. I usually take both. Like I'll take some of both, because sometimes there'll be some things I don't like, and I'll be like, okay, let me use that instead. So it's kind of like that. I don't use ChatGPT as much these days. Grok has just gotten better over time, so it serves my purposes. I don't really use ChatGPT as much for that purpose, but I do like to get its rating just to see. There's another AI model that I found out about called Claude. I was just checking it out to see how its rating system is. They tend to be the same, all these AIs, in terms of how they rate. Generally, Claude is a bit stricter, but at the same time, when you see its suggested improvements, you're like, this is like worse. So I don't really trust. I don't know if it's not. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't trust Claude's rating system as much, because when you see its suggested improvements, you're like, this is worse. Because it'll add words that are very unnecessary. And it just bloats the chapter, it just adds words, it increases the word count unnecessarily and stuff like that, because I think it tends towards verbosity, at least from what I've seen. Maybe if you make some tweaks in your prompts, it'll become more concise. It will, if you prompt it correctly, but its default seems to be verbose. So, yeah. There's DeepSeek. I don't use DeepSeek as much, though. But yeah, this is the workaround for me as a writer without an editor. If I had an editor, this is what the editor would be doing. This is what they would be doing if I had an editor. So, yeah. Really and truly, I'm taking on more of a load than a lot of writers do, because some editors are heavily involved in the writing process, to the point where low-key you could argue that, I don't want to be too harsh. I was going to say low-key you should argue their name should be on the book as a co-author. Some editors really do contribute that much to the story. But yeah, I don't know if that's the case with, you never know, actually. You actually never know who's doing what. But I think about an author like J.K. Rowling, and I was reading examples of what her editor does for her books, and it's a lot of trimming, it's a lot of adjusting or swapping out words and stuff like that. there might be a few story adjustments here and there, but it's like she's very much in control of her story. The editor is just there to tighten the prose and just make things flow nicely. So you might trim a segment, you might maybe this part of the story here, but it's tweaks and adjustments. It's not. I don't think her editor might be as hands-on as some editors are with some other novels, with other writers. At least as far as I know. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because there's not that much information available online about what these editors do with these authors. I remember watching a video, was it recorded last year or something? She was thanking two of her, she has two editors, I think. She has two. And she was thanking them for their contributions to her work and whatnot. And yeah, these people, they definitely contribute a lot to this book. And yeah, I don't have that, so I have to make up for it somehow. But I do think I'm handling a lot by myself, so I do need credit for that. But yeah, these people never give you credit, which is fine, I guess. It makes me think about, so even with my music, I was thinking about my music. As an artist, when you're putting your work out, you have to be prepared for a lot of criticism. It's just going to be inevitable that it comes. People are just going to have a lot to say about your work, and some people will be nice, some people just won't be, and you have to be fine with all of it. I remember I'd hosted a music camp, so I'd rented out there was like there was this place that has a bunch of rooms you can rent, so I rented this room full of bunk beds, and I just invited a bunch of dudes over, and we were just making music for the whole day. It was a music camp, and I'd filmed it and everything. It was a whole thing. And one of the guys that I'd invited, he was asking me, how do you release so much? Because I like to release a lot of music. It's just the way I am. I tend to. I prefer high output. That's just the way I'm wired. And he was saying, I'm very nervous, and I'm scared of what people can say, they'll critique me, like, or yada yada. So I don't really put out my songs for that reason. How do you gain the confidence to do that? And for me, it's like, I understand the feeling of apprehension at what people are going to say about your work. I think that's a normal reaction for an artist to have. Like, are people going to like my stuff? But for me, it doesn't really override my willingness to put out my work, So someone can say something negative. Ultimately, for me, I'm still going to do what I do regardless. I'm still going to put out my songs and all that sort of stuff. I had a moment where I was considering quitting some music, but then I was like, man, you enjoy this and you enjoy listening to your own songs. You just keep doing it. And for me, it's the thing of like, even if I never really pop off and put that music stuff, the process in and of itself is special. Listening to the songs is always enjoyable for me. And there's a beauty in that. And it's like, would you still do what you do if you weren't getting paid for it? Is a question some artists ask. Like, if you weren't getting paid to write, if you weren't getting paid to make songs, if you weren't getting paid to make films, would you still do it? Films are very expensive to make, so that's a tough one. Very time consuming. But it's the same concept. You can always find a way. You can always make time. You can always save money. Do this, do that. If you really want to do it. And for me, yeah, like, listen, I'm not getting paid for it. I am getting paid like a few dollars a month. Enough for me to like order like some Uber Eats or something, like a meal. But yeah, I'm not getting paid for this, for making music, and I still want to do it. I still enjoy it. So I think about that, and like, it's okay if it never really goes the way I want it to go. I'll still do it anyway. And I'll get better over time. I'll get better over time. And you have, as an artist, you have to be willing to take that on. There's just gonna be people talking a lot of shit, and it's fine. It's part of the. It's part of the process. There's no one who's immune to that, by the way. There's no one who just gets universal praise. And a lot of the time, if you aren't being criticized, it means you're not really doing anything remarkable. Because anyone who's trying something different, who's actually taking some risks, yeah, people are going to have something to say about that, of course. So the person that no one has anything bad to say about, usually that person is not much of a threat. They're very safe. They're the safe bet. So for me, I've just accepted that this is what comes with it. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily make the difficulties go away. It's always hard to hear certain criticisms. Because it's like also like not all of it is done from a place of I'm just trying to see you be better, bro. It's like people will frame it that way, but you know that people are just a lot of the time people are just trying to get at you. You have to be careful because not all advice is good advice. Like who do you listen to? Who's qualified to give opinions on this and all that sort of stuff? You have to be careful of whose opinion you value, because when there's, especially like on a public platform like this, and there's so many people that can give their opinions. Imagine if I just took every opinion seriously. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't be able to get into the downhill. I'd be getting pulled in every direction. So you have to really have the ability to just stick to your own guns and do what you're gonna do. Whoever likes it, likes it. Whoever doesn't like it, it's crazy. And also, for me, I have a long-term strategy. I'm turning 25 in May, and I have many more years ahead of me, God willing, of course. My goal is to improve gradually. I make incremental updates to my flow, my process. For example, this actually happened this morning. I wake up around 2 to 3 a.m. every morning to make a song. That's around the time I wake up. And as I was recording, I realized that the way I enunciate my plosives, like say plosives, like those sounds, and maybe other words, like sometimes I take heavy breaths and all that, it spikes the vocal sample. So when you're putting it into the DAW, you're going to see like the waveform of your vocals, and like those points in which you have loud plosives, or you breathe really loudly into the mic or whatever, you're going to see it as a spike. And now when you want to normalize your vocals, which basically just means to expand them, to make the waveform bigger, which makes it more dynamic and louder. Because of those spikes, the whole waveform can't expand equally or evenly. Think about, so if I can illustrate this, I can actually draw it for you. Where's my pen? There it is. So I can draw like, and then represent this as the peak. So this would be the waveform, a very rough representation of it. So when you want to normalize your vocal, right, your vocal sample, basically you see like this part here, like this more even part. When you normalize it, it'll expand like this. It'll expand, it'll become more dynamic, you can hear more, it's louder. and it sits better in the mix. You have a lot more to play with and tweak and all that sort of stuff. But unfortunately, because of this peak, when you try to normalize it, you see this peak, it hits the ceiling, which means you can't go higher because this has already hit the ceiling. So it boom, and then this will, it won't expand as much because of these peaks. And this goes for the bottom as well. It'll hit the floor as well. So you get a low peaks, but I guess the floor is or the bottom is what I don't know how to describe it. Also has a long tail, so that could affect it as well. So I realized that there's certain ways I need to perform my takes, or like perform my verses and whatever, so that I can avoid all this. And that's something I learned by, I've always known this, but some things like experience, man. Experience is the best teacher. These are things I've always been aware of, but it's just like, I didn't take it seriously. I wasn't really, it wasn't really a big deal to me. But as I'm trying to find ways to improve my mix and all this sort of stuff, I'm like, okay, I need to try some stuff, and this is something I came across, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely something I can do. And I think it'll be a significant upgrade to my mixing. It'll help my mixing a lot. And it's one thing that now I'm slightly better. And then maybe it'll be a couple months before I learn something else that improves my music. And over time, I'll become more and more and more and more and more refined until I'm just at a level where everything is just super tight. And you can always improve in one way or another, but generally I'll just be super polished. But I'm okay with that taking years. I don't need to be that tomorrow. I don't need that to be next week. I can take as much time as I need to get to that point. In the meanwhile, I'm having fun and just putting out music. You don't want to overthink it. And a lot of artists won't put out music because they want the music to sound perfect and all that sort of stuff. Listen, in this era of democratized tools, where a lot of people are just putting music out onto these streaming platforms, and you've got distributors that allow you to distribute your music to streaming platforms independently without a record label. You're seeing a lot of artists handle the job themselves, producing their own music, mixing themselves, all this sort of stuff. So a lot of music on these platforms, it's not super polished, but it's still good. You'll hear songs with millions of streams where the vocals aren't that well mixed, or like it's not at the same professional level as something that might come out of like some high budget recording studio, but it's still good. People still like it, and it's still popular because people are attracted to like the raw emotion of a song, how it makes them feel, more so than the technical details. That's not how most people consume music. I was never a fan of like XXXTentacion in that crowd. But one thing I always took note of was how his music was very distorted and all that sort of stuff. And I think part of it was on purpose, but also part of it I think was just not knowing how to mix that well, but it sounded good to people. There's a lot of distortion, there was a lot of clipping. It just sounded very raw, but it worked. But as you progressed and got in contact with more professionals, they refined some things and all that sort of stuff. I didn't listen to his music that much, but that's something I definitely took note of. And it let me know that it's possible to become very successful without necessarily being the most polished, pristine engineer. Because I do everything myself. I make my own beats, I mix and master. Everything is just me. It's a one-man show. So obviously, I might have stronger areas. I might be stronger at this, and this, but the idea is over time I'll master all areas. I might not be as good as the world's best engineers, but I'll be good enough for what I'm trying to do to attract my audience and to keep this going. That's the idea, and I'm okay with that taking out as long as it needs to. And yeah, man, when you're trying to work towards a goal, you have to be willing to look stupid. You have to be willing to be criticized. You have to be willing to just stumble, make mistakes, all that sort of stuff. And people don't want to do that. They don't want to make mistakes in public. They don't want to get laughed at. They don't want to be criticized. So they just don't engage. I said, come on, guys. Your dream is worth it. It's worth the criticism. It's worth the mockery. It's worth the embarrassment. It's worth all the. So yeah, it's a cycle. You go through ups and downs. Sometimes you're feeling super confident. Sometimes you're feeling super low. You're doubting yourself. It's a journey. You fluctuate. Your feelings fluctuate. But yeah, man, I'm committed. Whether it's my writing, whether it's my music, whether it's this channel, whatever, I'm just keep doing me. I'm gonna keep putting out what I like to put out, and the best I can hope for is people mess with me for me, and I try my best not to. I try my best not to appeal to like other people's taste. I just try to show you what I'm interested in, and if you like it, then you should rock with me. If you don't, then there's always other people you can go to. I think it's best that way. So I never feel like I'm performing, putting on a show, but rather I'm just being myself. It's so easy to just be myself. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to think too hard. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm a real studio file God. Thank you for this individual watching this one. Thank you for making them whole, unique, and guiding them upon towards peace, prosperity, and purpose. Thank you for blessing this person with wonderful people in life, for loving together and bringing them some best out of them. Thank you for maintaining the ones that are there to do the same thing. Thank you for blessing this person with love and marriage, and sustain that love and marriage and make me very, very, very happy. Thank you for blessing this person with a spirit of gratitude. So I can give thanks for all the wonderful things in your life. And give thanks, I can find peace, contentment, and attract even more blessings. Let your presence be felt in this person's life. So I know that you're God, that you're real, that you love them. And yours be there for them. Good health, all life, and happiness. And this person never really care about your mind and your brain. Jesus, I pray, amen, amen, amen.